saying I don't believe everything. It depends. Really, seriously. The word belief is such a broad, fuzzy idea. Like, do I believe in evolution? Well, no. I mean, because belief's not even the right word. It's like, do I believe in gravity? What do you mean, do I believe? It's true. Whether I believe in it or not.
Let me ask you this.
I'm sorry to make it sound fuzzy, but...
No, that's okay. The very horrible moment of 9/11. September 11, 2001.
Uh-huh.
And then the Super Bowl winning team was the New England Patriots defeating the St. Louis Rams. Everybody from that moment of 9/11 through the Super Bowl was patriotic. Everybody was. No matter what was going on this planet, people were patriotic. The fact that the New England Patriots win the Super Bowl, and, don't you find that to be unusual?
No, not in the least. I think they have a good team is why they won the Super Bowl. And
well, they did indeed, sure.
Well, what are you saying? That somehow there's an extra force at work that defeated the Rams?
Maybe the forces of millions of people collectively.
Oh, I see.
Got together and just gave them that added boost that they.
Well, if that were true, wouldn't that be true with home teams? The alleged home team advantage is only ever so slight, and not even in all sports. There's been studies on this. I
don't know. There's some home team advantages in basketball and hockey, more so than some of the other sports,
right,
where it's dramatic.
Yeah, right. So having 100,000 people screaming for you, maybe that's what does it. Not 10 million people around the world silently thinking patriotic thoughts because your name is the Patriots.
What do you mean? You don't believe in prayer?
What if? Are you saying that the Rams were not as patriotic as the Patriots? Are you saying that if your name resembles the word that you're thinking, that would do it?
That's possible, but I'm saying that I think the population was behind the Patriots because they felt the name was important for the moment we were in.
I would be pretty damn skeptical of that, yeah. That would be pretty hard to test.
I'm going to open up Fast Blast later. We're going to take our own little poll, okay? And we'll see what happens.
And we'll see how they do. They won yesterday, so we'll see how they do against the Pirates this next week.
People are calling...
Because the Pirates, they should lose every time because, Pirates, they're evil. They're bad. They're dark.
People, we're going to talk about good and evil.
Like Johnny Depp.
People are calling for a skeptic cage battle when you take on all these challengers. I guess they want a fence around all of you.
Ultimate fighting man skepticism.
Yeah, that's right. One comes out. Two go in, one comes out. There was a movie about that. I can't remember the name about that. Okay, in this particular case, let me ask you some various things. You tell me what you think. Bermuda Triangle. Weird things happen there. Right?
Yeah. Well, okay. A lot of things happen in that area because it's a heavily trafficked area. There's a lot of planes, a lot of ships, a lot of traffic, a lot of weather. So more things happen there than happen, say, in the North Atlantic because there's just more stuff happening. So again, the law of large numbers. The more things you have happening, the more the higher the likelihood of unusual things happening. Just by definition, it has to happen. Unusual things have to happen more there than elsewhere, simply because there's more things happening. So to study it scientifically, you need a baseline that says this is the rate at which weird things happen given this background of things happening. And is the Bermuda Triangle unusual in that sense? The answer is no, it's not.
The search for Atlantis.
Yeah.
Mythological? Scientific?
Yeah, I think this is a great example of myth and history at work, where Plato wrote this incredible story that, to me, when you read it in its context, is clearly a social commentary on his own time, on the Athenians, not the Atlanteans, on Athens, and Athens being too bellicose, and this is a tale for our own times, maybe too involved in foreign affairs, too involved in wars that are eating up the domestic economy and so forth and causing domestic strife. And Plato was really making a comment. Look what happened to those Atlanteans. He's writing fiction. It's like Harry Potter. He's making social commentary through fiction. And so look what happened to these Atlanteans. They got too prideful, too extended themselves too far, and look what happened to them. So it's a moral homily for the people then. And outside of Plato, there's nothing. Everybody starts at Plato and builds from there. There's nothing else about Atlantis except for Plato. That's the original source.
Okay, let me ask you this. I got to tie you down on one of these things. I'm gonna capture you yet. Someone has got a disease, cancer.
Uh-huh.
They look at him. He's got a horrible tumor. He believes he can rid it from whatever. He believes he can get rid of it. The person just thinks, concentrates, comes back a month later. Doctors X-ray the guy again. The tumor's gone. Uh-huh. They're baffled. They have no idea. They have no medical explanation what happened. Yet this guy believed he would be able to do this. Uh-huh. Do you think that was medical science, or do you think it was his belief system that healed himself?
Oh, well, a belief system can be part of medical science. We know that attitudes and personality, what your attitude toward, well, not the cancer so much as just health and so on, does make a difference. We don't know much about psychoneuroimmunology, how your psychological states influence your nervous system, which influences your immune system. There's a lot of research that needs to be done there. I think there is something to that. The problem with the specific anecdotes, like the one you just gave, and there's lots of them, is what about all the people that thought positive thoughts? They were positive people, they did all the right things, and they died.
And they died.
And we never hear from those. I mean, you hear about the Lance Armstrongs, the guy who goes on to win the Tour de France 7 times after cancer. Great.
Well, as a matter of fact, though, I had Dr. Paul Pearsall on a few weeks ago when I was in St. Louis, and he said exactly what you've just said. He said, positive thinking alone won't cure you.
Yeah.
You need help.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're remembering the hits, the unusual things, the Lance Armstrongs. We're not dead men tell no tales. The people that got testicular cancer that migrated to other parts of their bodies, and they did everything Lance did, and they died. Well, they're not going on to win bike races and become heroes, and it's sad, but it's true. But in science, again, we have to keep track of all the misses. And this is how psychics and astrologers and so on and cancer quackery works, is that you only tell people the hits, and they remember the unusual things. Cancer is a big thing because in wherever medicine falls short of curing most people, that's where the quackery comes in, or the wishful thinking, or the anecdotal thinking comes in, and that's where we have to be especially careful about getting our hopes too high for this or that particular thing, and it's worth exploring those experimental treatments. This is one of the things that the Lance Armstrong Foundation does, is it pours money into experimental trials, because that's where the action is. Beyond that, here's the problem with what's the harm? Why can't I try this incredible alternative cure, extract of seaweed, or, I have to go to Tijuana and take these shots or whatever. What's wrong with that? My doctor just told me I'm going to die anyway. And that's a good argument, except for when you look into it, and I did, because my mom went through this and ended up dying of brain
Sorry
cancer.
to hear that.
It's okay, because I learned a lot, and we had a good 10 years together going through all this. But what I found out was that there's not one alternative cancer treatment, and, okay, Mom, let's go try that one since these other traditional treatments failed. There's hundreds of them, none of which have been tested. Now, is it possible that one of them is the cure? Yeah, it is. It's entirely possible, and by God, let's go find out by, running as many clinical trials as we can. But for one given case, my mom, well, particularly a dying person, they're tired and weak, and schlepping them down to LAX and flying off somewhere around the globe to try some treatment, that could kill them. And the problem with trying experimental treatments like that for cancer patients, by the time they get to that stage where they're going to try something like that, they're pretty far along in their cancer, because they've already gone through all the traditional medical treatments and they didn't work. By the time you get to there, you're almost dead anyway. So it's a very difficult subject, and especially since it involves death, we're all pretty emotional about it. It's hard to be rational about it.
Princeton University, they're doing experiments with on global consciousness. It's a project. They call their devices eggs, placed around the world as they respond during various time periods. They also did the 9/11. They have seen spikes in what would normally be normal random array of values. They see some spikes in these things. Uh-huh. Maybe scientific proof, I guess, if this research keeps up.
Yeah, I have not looked at the research on that yet. People have sent me a few things, and I haven't had time to sit down and really look at it carefully, so I don't know. But yeah, sure, of course, let's research it. Why not?
I mean, this could be what we're looking for. Everybody who wants to find out more about the science and the unusual and the paranormal, and see if there's a tie-in.
Maybe. Yep. Have to keep an open mind.
Maybe.
But well. Again, we have to remember the more extraordinary the claim, the more extraordinary the evidence needs to be. And again, we go back to something a little more mainstream like cold fusion. It's not that there couldn't be cold fusion. It'd be great. Energy too cheap to meter. Great, let's do it. I'm all for it. But within 6 months, when no labs could replicate it, that was a really bad sign that there was something else going on.
Well, maybe there's a politics behind it too, though, Michael. Maybe they don't want to do it.
No, it isn't. These guys, the independent scientists in these labs, they would have loved to replicate this. Believe me, they would. I know a lot of Caltech guys that were working on it. There's no, there was no men in black from the oil company.
All right, but you know, 100,000 years from now, whatever is being used for propulsion, fuel, is going to be dramatically different than what we're using today. They're going to look back at us and call us the dark ages.
It's crude as
sure.
can be,
I mean, so these
coal.
things
Can you
are
believe we still
possible.
use coal?
Yeah.
So right. Yeah, it's going to happen. But I think the problem with, say, electric cars, the battery problem, I think these are hard problems. They're just harder than we thought they were. It's not that there's some conspiracy preventing it. I mean, like my good friend Paul McCready at Aero Environment here, he's one of the greatest engineers he was voted the engineer of the 20th century. The guy invented human-powered flight, solar-powered planes, so forth. He's been telling me for decades, we're really close to solving the battery problem. But you know what? It's a hard problem. That's it. It's not that it's not going to be solved, and there's no men in black telling Paul he can't do this. It's just a hard problem. And we'll get there, but it just takes longer than we thought it would.
You mentioned coal. I wish we'd use more coal again and get away from our reliance on foreign fuel.
Really?
Yeah, I wish we would.
No. I'm for going nuclear.
You are?
Yeah.
Why?
Oh, I just think it's more efficient. The only problem is the spent fuel rods. But
you're not afraid of a Chernobyl?
Oh, no. I think... the Chernobyl was largely, this is an inept bureaucracy running it.
Incompetence, no doubt.
Yeah, I think we probably go over the top in the other direction. I think you need a little more freedom for these guys to try new technologies. But, given the alternatives, how many people have died from nuclear power in the United States? 0. How many people have died from coal? Well, last week, 12.
Yeah,
it's You have to have we can't have a zero tolerance for nuclear power and then, allow all this stuff to happen with say coal or oil. And, you have to allow people to fail. The airline industry, now has a zero tolerance. But, for the first 30, 40 years of experimental flight, they had they allowed the technology to fail. You have to be able to fail in order to improve technologies.
Lourdes, France. People are going into this spring coming out with what they believe to be miraculous cures.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Well, if it was true, let's bottle it. And this is the problem. It's not bottleable. And all the people that go and they die anyway, we don't hear about those.
So you're just saying the probability makes these people live?
Yeah. So you end up with, sort of an urban legend starts to build up around a place like that, so more people go there, so we're going to hear more stories. Okay, look, here's the thing. Bodies sometimes just heal themselves. In fact, I've talked to medical historians about this. When was it better to go to the doctor than not go to the doctor? And the answer is well into the 20th century. Well into the 20th century, it was better not to go to any doctor. It was worse to go to the hospital. Don't do anything, and you'll be better off. So the body does have an amazing capability of healing itself. And so whatever you were doing just before you got better, that's what gets the credit. When in fact it's, the human body is a very complex system, and we don't fully understand the whole immune system and the healing system and all that. So things are going to happen like that. Spontaneous remission of tumors, people getting better when they're told they're going to die, and so on. Of course this is going to happen. But statistically, most people that are, have a particular kind of cancer, they just die. And we don't hear any good things, next on Oprah, so on. He got cancer and he died. That doesn't make the headlines.
Well, that's true. That does not make the headlines.
So what we're looking for then is, what the closest thing to what we're talking, that I'd be willing to admit what we're talking about here is something to do with lifestyle choices, overall health, that does integrate your psychological states, how you think, that kind of stuff. I'm convinced that has to have some effect on your overall health, whether it has anything to do with a specific kind of disease, AIDS or cancer, something like that. Probably not. But
well, when we pass on, do you believe that the spirit lives, the soul lives?
Well, we have to define the soul. Okay, so what do we mean by the soul?
It could be scientific. It could be a scientific, I guess it could be part of the living system, maybe in a different realm.
Yeah. Okay, so here's how I think about that. Because I'm often asked what's my position on the afterlife, and my answer is I'm for it. I don't want to die any more than anybody else, but but what I'm for and what's real, may not be the same thing. So, but my soul, what is the soul? It's our pattern of information. It's my memories, my personality, my DNA, my protein sequences, my body, my mind, the whole package. That's my soul.
That could very well exist outside the human body.
The question is, can it?
Maybe.
How do we, if you leave aside the paranormal, there are science fiction scenarios for how we can download our memories, our personalities, onto a platform that lasts longer, like silicon chips.
Sure.
The electric meat of our brains is only good for a couple decades, and then it wears out and you die. So can't we replace brains neuron by neuron? This is Bart Kosko's idea of having a chip. You replace your brain neuron by neuron with silicon neurons, and they last 1,000 years or 10,000 years, something like that. Yeah, that'd be great if we knew how the brain is wired. It's so complex, but once we figure that out, maybe that's doable. And then if you can last 10,000 years on a silicon chip platform, by then they'll have other systems, other mediums that can last 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years, and so trying to achieve immortality through technology, nanotechnology or whatever, it's completely in the realm of science fiction, but it's sure darn fun to think about. But that gets us to thinking about what do you mean by the soul, and when somebody says I think the soul lives on, it's legitimate to ask how does it live on? What platform? I mean, what's the medium that carries it into the future?
Maybe we don't know.
Maybe we don't. Well, okay. Yeah, so you don't know, I don't know, nobody knows. Okay, then we can just say, in science, it's okay to say, I don't know. Nobody knows. If we knew for sure, we wouldn't have all these great debates about the afterlife and discussions about it and worried about it. And nobody knows.
Is there anything you believe in without proof?
Oh, I would say emotional states. Particularly affection, love, feelings for my family, those sorts of things. I can't, I guess, prove. I'm not sure how proof would be involved in that. These are just subjective states.
You wouldn't need proof. Stay with us, Michael. We're going to take this break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the science of good and evil next hour. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll kind of put you in the skeptic cage with Michael Shermer. Or maybe you're on his side. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And our guest, Dr. Michael Shermer, we're going to talk about the science of good and evil. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines next hour. And for the rest of the week, Colm Kelleher will be our guest tomorrow, sharing a true story about a cattle ranching family that moved to an isolated ranch in Utah to lead a quiet life, only to be terrorized by a series of seemingly unrelated and unexplainable events. Jose Escamilla joins us on Wednesday, talking more about those strange flying rods he's been investigating. And then the debate, Jerry Corso, Mike Rupert, Black Gold Stranglehold, Peak Oil. We'll be talking about that. And then Friday the 13th, open lines in just a few days. So we'll be back in a moment with Michael Shermer on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie, Dr. Michael Shermer. Michael, fascinated by your thoughts of the science of good and evil. Let's talk about good and evil, first of all. We all have our own definitions for what it may be. Let's get yours.
Well, I wrote the book, The Science of Good and Evil, as sort of the sequel to Why People Believe Weird Things, which is about pseudoscience, and then How We Believe was the second book about God and religion. And then, so basically people would ask, well, if you're skeptical of the afterlife, what about God? And if you're skeptical of God, then why be good? What's the origins of morality? So the science of good and evil is really an attempt to provide a natural explanation for the origins of morality and the sense of good and evil that we have. We all have that sense. We feel guilty when we do something wrong. We feel a sense of pride when we're help people and are cooperative and altruistic. Where does that come from? And the standard answer we get is, well, God gave that to us. Well, that may be, but from a scientific point of view, that's not an answer. We have to look for natural causes. So I argue in the book that we evolved a moral sense, what we call the moral sentiments, the emotions, the feelings we have of guilt and shame or pride and joy of having done the right thing or the wrong thing. Because we are a social primate species who evolved in these small communities of a couple of dozen to a couple hundred individuals, in which it was necessary to bond together, to cooperate, to exhibit pro-social behavior, as we call it, to be altruistic sometimes. And it's true, we do have a selfish, greedy, nasty side to us. Clearly, we're xenophobic, we're tribal. But that also has an evolutionary explanation, the evil side. That is, I think, my theory is that we evolved within groups, within our own group, to be pro-social, cooperative, nice, helpful, altruistic, whatever you want to call it. But between groups, we're pretty nasty, pretty xenophobic, we're pretty tribal. Anybody that's different from us, and it's easy to define people differently by almost any criteria, and that's the dark side of humanity. So what's involved with morality is making a choice to do the right thing, to do the moral thing, even when you don't want to, even when it's somebody not in your group. I actually think, when it says in the Bible about, treat your,
do unto others.
Do unto others, as you would have them do unto you. And these moral rules are there for a reason. The reason being that the natural inclination is to be nasty to other people. Who are the others? These are your non-tribal members, people from the other side of the river. I mean, the Old Testament is chock-a-block full of nasty stories of what people do to each other, endorsed by God even.
I think humans generally are evil. Don't you?
I think. Well, here's what I think. That
I used to think we were all good, but
we're both good and evil. We tend to be good with our own people, our own tribe, and so on. We tend to be nasty with those that are different from us. And this is so. What the long history of civilization has been, at least in the last 500 years, has been this march toward incorporating more and more people into our in-group. It used to be, okay, we can't let blacks in the group, we can't let women in the group, we can't let minorities in the group, we can't, and the whole movement of human rights is to say, no, everybody's in the group. Everybody's a member of the tribe. It's difficult to sell people on that because the natural inclination is to say, no, not everybody can be in the tribe. Only the special, chosen few can be in the tribe. And that's our natural inclination. That's what evolution gave us. So we have to fight that inclination.
Sounds like the Illuminati all over again.
Well, the Illuminati is just a tribe, right? I mean,
a very elite one.
It's one of the things that psychologists discovered in the 60s when they tried to answer the question, why the Nazis? I mean, not just why the Nazis, why Germans? Advanced, cultured, educated, the people that gave us Goethe and so forth, and Beethoven. I mean, why them? And it turns out the answer is why not them? Anybody can be trained to do this. Suicide terrorists. How do you get people to fly planes into buildings? It's easy. It's actually not hard at all to do. You have to set up certain social conditions and, raise them a certain way and indoctrinate them a certain way. Anybody can be shaped that way.
Well, look at Iraq, for example. Most of the tragedy that's occurring there now has been because of suicide bombers. Can you imagine the amount of people who are prepared to take their lives when, sadly enough, in Iraq, and I'm not talking about the death of our American troops now, I'm talking about Iraqi citizens, the world will never remember who they were.
Uh-huh.
And yet these people are convinced to strap bombs to themselves, go into little areas, blow themselves up, taking out people, and in a matter of weeks or months, the world, of course, doesn't remember, and I'm sure the Iraqis would. But I mean, they're gone. What's the purpose? What does it serve, Michael?
Yeah, well, nothing. I mean, it's evil, but from their perspective, of course, they're freedom fighters or whatever.
Yeah, they think that this horror, if it continues, will get us to leave and everything will be okay.
You get the 72 virgins on the other side. I mean, it is the dark side of religion. I mean, religion has many good sides. I'm not, I don't believe I'm an atheist, but I'm not a nasty atheist. I don't just blanketly say all religion is bad. Plenty of things religion does is good, but this is one of the dark sides of religion.
Are all skeptics atheists?
No. About 25 to 30% from the various studies we've done over the last 15 years believe in some form of God. 25 to 30%. So one quarter to a third or so.
Well, how could they? Now, this is interesting. How can they be skeptics about most issues, but not God?
They don't think about it. I don't think they apply skepticism to everything. And let's face it, there are certain questions science can't answer, at least at the moment, which is some of these ultimate questions, where the universe come from.
True.
We can't, religion can't answer it, science can't, nobody can answer it. They're unanswerable questions, and then you're free at that point to make the leap of faith if you want, I guess, if it works for you. And, that's not my thing, but, I understand why other people do make that choice. And our thing is that as long as you keep it private, I don't really care what you believe. It's the attempt to legislate people's religious and moral beliefs and force them upon me. That's where it gets kind of dicey.
You mean you don't like a nativity scene put in front of a government building for Christmas?
I actually don't care about that personally.
All right, good. All right, so you get points there.
I couldn't care less about those kinds of things. It doesn't bother me in the least. I am more concerned about like science education with the creationism business. That's getting a little more intrusive. Whether something's just sitting there on a lawn, that's one thing, but you have a captured audience of students and you're going to tell them, a particular religious doctrine in the science.
Okay, what if it was opened up, though, for debate? What if you gave kids alternatives? You talked about, intelligent design, and then you talked about evolution, and you did it in a debate forum where the kids could all chat amongst each other.
Oh, we do. I do that.
That's healthy,
that's
isn't it?
That's one of the things Bill Dembski and I, the lead intelligent design theorist, we do these debates on college campuses.
I mean, what's wrong with that in high school? Okay.
In high school?
In high school, yeah.
Well, in high school, okay. In the classroom, in the science classroom itself, you got to teach the science. If you want to have in your current events class or the social studies class or political science class or whatever, comparative mythology class, history class, whatever, and you want to have it there, that's fine because that is an interesting subject. But by their own admission, the intelligent design people said, we don't have a science curriculum to teach at the moment. Okay, fine. Thank you for being honest, and get back to us when you do.
Well, but how do we know what the real science is with that? How do we know that the evolutionary process is indeed real science?
Because we have a community of scientists, professional scientists who do this for a living. I mean, it'd be like me walking into a coal mine and saying, how do you guys know what you're doing? I have an alternative theory about coal mining. They'd say, screw you, get out of here, you're dangerous. This is our job. And in a way, science is a social community like that, like coal miners. I mean, this is what we do for a living. And there's plenty of skepticism among scientists. There's, like, for example, my favorite example is Lynn Margulis, who is a microbiologist at Amherst and University of Massachusetts Amherst, and she's a world-class scientist, member of the National Academy of Science, and she has a non-Darwinian view of evolution. She believes that the cells that you and I are made out of, they're called eukaryote cells, and they're loaded with all these little organelles that we all had to learn in high school biology. Those little organelles, she argues, were themselves once independent cells. They were prokaryote cells, which are simpler cells. Mitochondria, for example, in our complex eukaryote cells that we have, mitochondria has its own DNA. Well, what's that all about? Well, Lynn says that's because it used to be its own cell, and it was incorporated through what she calls symbiogenesis, which is not a Darwinian method at all. And but listen, Lynn has been working on this since the 60s, so for 35 years. She's been running a lab, conducting research and experiments. She has graduate students. She has grants and fellowships. She's published 300-400 papers. She's published monographs, technical books, textbooks, popular books. She's spoken at hundreds of conferences. And finally, now, her theory is getting taught in public school, high school biology classrooms. Finally, that's how it happens. So that's how it becomes science. So I tell this story to the intelligent design people to say, you want to know how to get your stuff taught in public high school biology classes, you got to do what Lynn did. Get out there and roll up your sleeves and get to work. If you've got something, it'll be taught. And if you don't, it won't, period. Don't go to your congressman and force teachers to teach it. That's not right.
With this entire push that the courts are getting involved in now, is it an issue that just enrages parents? I mean, if you, I don't know if you have children or not, but if they were teaching your children intelligent design, would you go nuts?
Yeah, I'd be pretty upset about that. I mean, that won't happen with my daughter, but because I know the school and the teachers and so on. But I think what really concerns parents in this whole evolution intelligent design debate has nothing to do with science. Parents don't care about bacterial flagellum and punctuated equilibrium or any of this technical stuff that we all debate. What they want to know is, if my kid learns this evolution stuff, is he going to become like an immoral atheist and sex, drugs, and rock and roll and become a communist? I mean, if Americans learn this evolution stuff, are we going to hell in a handbasket? Are we going to become atheist communists or whatever? That's what people are concerned about. They don't care about these technical details. And the answer to the concern is, of course not. It's just a science, and they're no more going to become communists if they learn physics or gravity than they will if they learn evolution. So we have to dispel that myth, I think.
I'm going to preface this by saying I believe we went to the moon, but as a skeptic, what do you think?
Yeah, of course we went to the moon. And I challenge you to tell Buzz Aldrin to his face that he never went there, and you saw what he did.
Yeah, he popped some guy.
Punched that guy out. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the silly things. But we used it as an example in Junior Skeptic magazine. We publish a magazine for kids called Junior Skeptic because it was a great example of critical thinking and how to actually take somebody's claims and not just make fun of them and say, oh, that's stupid, but to ask them, okay, what are your 12 best claims? And so we got them and, lined them up and then provided answers. And I learned a lot actually doing that. Like they had this thing about why isn't there any smoke coming out of the exhaust, the engine bell of the lunar lander when it took off from the moon? And I thought, yeah, well, that's interesting. Why not? So I actually got a hold of the guy that made the motor. And it's such a simple thing. I felt foolish that I didn't know. But it's just different kinds of fuel. Some fuel burns very clean, like the Gemini rockets. You don't see any smoke coming out of them at all. And other fuels burn very dirty, like the difference between when the space shuttle takes off, the solid rocket boosters, I think it's aluminum and rubber it's burning. It's very dirty. And the smoke just comes pouring out. But the three rocket bells there that you see at the base of the space shuttle itself, they're going full blast, and there's nothing coming out of them. So it's just the fuel that you burn. And all of the explanations for the we never went to the moon theory are along those lines. You just have to know something about the rocket science.
Though I believe, again, that we went to the moon, some of the arguments that we didn't are pretty compelling. When you talk to these people, Michael, and I have, some of the things they talk about are, when you can't see stars and that. But, I had Edgar Mitchell on the program before. He'd be a good one for you to debate, by the way, about some things.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, and, those people who say we did not go come up with some interesting arguments. I just don't think.
Did you ask Edgar Mitchell if we went to the moon?
Oh, he said we went to the moon. And believe me, I told him I believed we went to the moon before I asked him.
You didn't want to get punched?
No, I'm not afraid of getting punched, Michael. But but it is. We don't have a lot of evidence other than rocks and things like that could have been found anywhere.
Oh, well, we have a lot of evidence. I mean, the transmissions, I know some astronomers who watched the Apollo spacecraft go to the moon. You could see it in a telescope.
Well,
You could see the dumps. You could see the...
How do you know there were people in there, though?
Yeah, well...
See? I mean, I'm taking the devil's advocate
Yeah,
here.
okay.
I'm just saying that the skeptics who say we didn't go talk about, phony movies and films, and there's no question all that was being done on a simulator. So they could have, I think they accidentally mixed in real photos and images that they took maybe on a set. And a lot of people then blew it out of proportion and things like that. But it is interesting. It's compelling.
Okay, here's the problem with big conspiracy theories like that. Not just that one, but all of them. I was on G. Gordon Liddy's show once, and I thought I'll ask this guy what he thinks about conspiracy theories because he was involved in one.
He was one. That's right.
So it's not that they can't happen; they do happen. So what's the deal with some of these big ones? And he said, the problem with those theories is that twofold. One is the leakage problem. People can't keep their mouth shut. He goes, believe me, they can't keep their mouth shut. They want to sing like the canary, and so
agreed
like
on that. You had 400,000 people working on the moon project.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you're going to keep every one of them silent. And he says the other problem is the competence problem. He says you're dealing with bureaucrats here. I mean, there's a lot of people that just aren't all that competent to pull off some amazing, complex conspiracy. I mean, it's like the 9/11 conspiracy theorists. One of the most amusing things to me about this is, on the one hand, George Bush is a boob. He's an ignoramus idiot. On the other hand, he's so powerful and brilliant that he can construct and orchestrate this incredible conspiracy to, time the impact of the planes with the demolition bombs and the, this, that, and the other, and coordinate all the jets and, this kind of stuff. And this is the problem with these big conspiracy theories. It would be impossible to keep somebody from going to 60.
And though I don't believe any of those first two examples, there may be some middle ground there somewhere. Believe it or not. There are people who profit on other people's doom and misery.
Oh, well, that's true. Absolutely. I mean, look at the Left Behind series of books. I mean, the end of the world is coming, and we're the chosen few, and buy the books, and because you're part of the chosen few. People love that.
What's new for you, by the way? What are you working on now?
Oh, well, I just finished a book on evolution and intelligent design, but my next book is going to be on evolutionary economics. That is how science can explain the complex system known as the economy, and what human psychology based on our evolutionary history can tell us about that. For example, why in the world would anybody, total strangers, trust each other enough to swap money for goods? I mean, we routinely, daily interact with complete strangers. And
remember the old saying, let the buyer beware?
Buyer beware. That's right.
Stay with us, Michael. Back with you in a moment. We'll flip the switch and open up the phone lines right here on Coast to Coast AM. Indeed, back in Los Angeles, and we'll be back in a moment with your phone calls. Our special guest tonight, Dr. Michael Shermer, right here on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie with our special guest, Dr. Michael Shermer, and, of course, your phone calls right here on Coast to Coast AM. Michael, of every topic you've talked to in terms of being skeptical, is there one that, if you fudged a little bit, you could believe, you're just on the fence?
Hypnosis as an altered state of consciousness. And as I said in the first hour, we don't really know what consciousness is, so there's something peculiar about altered states, like with hypnosis, that hypnosis is tapping into something in a way like sleep is. Where do you go when you go to sleep? And
True.
why do you come back? That sort of thing, I think, just fascinates me, and I think most of my fellow skeptics are skeptical of me on that regard, saying that there's something to hypnosis. I think there is. I think there is a little homunculus in there keeping track, whatever that is, a brain module that is keeping track of things when we're away.
Was the late Philip Klass in your camp?
Yeah, Phil Klass was a classic skeptic. Sure. Good investigative journalist.
Did you deal with him very often?
I didn't know Phil personally. I dealt with him on a number of times and occasions, but not personally, just professionally. And I found him to be very polite and thoughtful, a good investigative journalist. He, I think, for some people was a little abrasive or a little aggressive, but his background was investigative journalism, and investigative journalists are the biggest skeptics I've ever met. I mean, they don't trust anybody because they've been scammed so many times, or they see people scamming when they do their investigations, particularly people that are on the crime beat or on the like the bunco squad for the police that cover that kind of stuff. They see enough nasty human behavior that they're very skeptical.
All right, let's go to the phones. We're going to put you in the skeptic's cage.
Okay.
Two go in, one comes out. East of the Rockies, welcome to Coast. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, George. This is Joe from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Hi, Joe. Good to have you with us.
Good. I just have first of all, I'd like to give my condolences to Art and his family.
Sure. Thank you.
Also, just a question for Michael. I was wondering what his take was about the soul actually being like electromagnetic energy, because the body runs off of roughly 200 volts or so of electricity, and that the soul could actually be electromagnetic energy, because law of energy states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only convert. Therefore, I feel we can convert to like other realms.
Right, but I guess the question would be what is holding the pattern of electromagnetic energy that represents your personality and memories and so on to exist beyond the physical body? In other words, where would it go? What holds the pattern together? What's the medium? The energy by itself would just dissipate without a medium to hold the pattern. It's like with light. It dissipates square the distance. It gets weaker. That would be the problem with that.
Okay. I was thinking that like our higher consciousness. I don't know what your take is on that, but maybe that just has something to do with it. Of all that is, and just that I believe that our souls do convert to other realms of existence. And but I'd also like to say, just without skeptics, we would have no fun in searching for the ultimate answer.
That's right. Well, listen, science is skepticism, and that's we in science deal with the mysterious and the unknown. That's where the action is, not the not squaring the number down to the 6 decimal point or something. It's going into the unknown. That's where it's fun.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, appreciate you being part of the program as well. Let's go to our international line. You're calling from where?
Yes, hi. Michael?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, hi, this is Stefan. I'm calling from Nova Scotia.
Oh, wonderful.
Good morning. Good morning, George.
Hi, Stefan.
I just wanted to say that it's very important to have people like you, because I think on some level, and I also have a question for George, a short little statement, but most importantly, I think it's most important to have people such as yourself, because I believe that you are truly seeking something paranormal, and without you jerking the truth out, you really can't get the real truth. You can only get a blind faith. So I think you are true seekers of something paranormal and have this ongoing desire to find something. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but you have an ongoing desire to hopefully one day crack the nut, so to speak. Is that true at all, Michael?
Well, what I'm after is just find out how the world works, and however it works is okay with me, as long as we're fairly confident that we're right in our interpretation that it works that way. And so, and again, as I said earlier, one of the earlier hours was that there's no such thing really as the paranormal and the supernatural. Those are just place fillers, linguistic place fillers for something we don't understand. It's like when astronomers use the words dark energy and dark matter. These are just place fillers. They haven't any idea what it is. Once it's found, it's neutrinos or it's this or that, they won't use the phrase dark matter anymore. And that's the case with the paranormal. There's just the normal and the natural, and then stuff we can't explain. And so let's say it turns out there is a soul and it's carried forward on some electromagnetic pattern, and we've discovered this brand new form of energy that holds the pattern together or something like that. Well, now we're just back in the realm of science. It's just a natural phenomenon, and we've just dispensed with the paranormal and the supernatural.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And George, if I could just mention one thing about the little situation that happened with Sylvia Brown.
Yeah.
At the moment that she said to you, yes, they will be found, you were in the understanding, in general, that she was on the same wavelength as you.
Right.
Correct? Generally.
Correct. That's true.
Now, here's how you would have known that she's a psychic. If she turned around to you in the quiet of time and said to you, "But George, they're not coming out alive." If she hit you with that number
or if she would have said, "But there's something strange here. I feel weird vibrations. I don't understand this story."
But she was
something like that.
But she was on the same page with you, and you sensed it, and there was no alteration until later.
That's right. That's true.
And I think that was the definitive moment that told me, and I think sort of told you inside, that there's something wrong here.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks,
you.
Stefan. Appreciate you being on the program. He's right about that one, Michael.
Yeah, well put.
West of the Rockies. Welcome to Coast. You're on the air. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Mike and George. I just want to say my condolences for Art and his family. And I'm calling from Anchorage and listening to you on 650 Kenai.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And I just want to ask Mike a couple questions, and I'll return to you guys so we can get back on the air. Actually, I just want to know if, hypothetically, if you believed in an afterlife, not an afterlife, but life in the, I will say, around the universe, do you think they would have the same potential for the surroundings as a soul? And I know it's just a hypothetical questions, but do you think that they would also have a soul and would be looking up to a higher power, and this universe, being as what it is, would have a being to be looking up to, because our minds are just so small that we can't actually imagine how things have always been and always will be, because we are so egotistical in our way of thinking that somewhere things have to have an opening. Things will always have to have an end. Now, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think one of the huge problems we have with trying to envision what extraterrestrial life would look like and be like and how to communicate with them and so on is that we can't get out of our own skin. It's like, the fish trying to imagine what life would be like without water. I mean, if fish it turned out to be the most intelligent creatures on Earth and they could write or communicate somehow, they'd probably communicate. Life beyond water is impossible. I can't even imagine it. And we have the same problem. Carl Sagan used to say we're carbon chauvinists. We can't imagine how molecules and protein chains and so forth, life could be based on something other than carbon. But that's really just a limitation of our own thinking. It's hard for us to get out of the water, so to speak. And we can make certain assumptions, I think, that the principle of uniformitarianism in science is that the laws of nature operate here in the same way that they operate elsewhere in the universe. So the law of gravity, the various Newtonian laws, formulas that describe how gravity works, they'll work on other planets like they work here. And stars will evolve in other galaxies like they evolve in our galaxy. We can make those kinds of assumptions. What the SETI people assume is that other intelligences will also discover these laws of physics and mathematics. And so the most common language we can hope to have is the language of science and math, and so we should try to communicate with them that way. That's the best we can do. Beyond that, one of the reasons Sagan didn't want to show what aliens look like in Contact, and he also consulted on the movie 2001, and he insisted that they not show the aliens, and they didn't, was that we're too limited. Whatever you show is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be too anthropomorphic. It's going to be too Star Trek-like, where they're bipedal primates with, that have gnarly things on their forehead. Otherwise, they look just like us, and they speak English with an Indian accent or something. It's just ludicrously anthropocentric.
I think they look like us. I think there's I think everything in this universal soup is the same, and I think the end of the evolutionary cycle becomes what we are.
Yeah,
so
but,
I think
but
there are
how
a lot
many
of
life forms on Earth have ended up looking like us?
Well, that's what I mean.
Only the primates.
Yeah, I know that, but that's why I believe.
Oh, but your assumption is that we're the pinnacle.
We're the top.
Yeah,
that's right.
But But what's wrong with dolphins? What if it turns out they look like dolphins because they live in the water, but they have big brains and they can communicate?
Dolphins, I believe, are very, very spiritual in their own way, and probably more intelligent than we are.
Okay, well then, why would you think we're the we're the peak then.
I'm talking about in terms of the way we move around on the planet and stuff.
That's true. It would be hard to communicate on another planet with a dolphin because they're underwater and they're not going to have radios. So we're even limited that way. I mean, we're assuming that ETs have radios.
Yeah,
and
that could have been. Well, that's one of the gripes I've got with SETI, that they continue searching for radio transmissions that may never have been out there.
That's right. But what's the alternative? We don't have many.
Let's move to our first-time caller line. You're on Coast to Coast with us. Hi there.
Hi, George, Michael. Nice show tonight.
Thank you.
You betcha. I think your program, George, is alternately educational and always entertaining, and a lot of times, if only because it provides sort of a great case study in human behavior. But tonight, I'm kind of on a different page in that I concur with your guest on most of what he's espousing. Regarding what you were talking about earlier, evidence of God, would you agree, Michael, that there's sort of an intrinsic mechanism in God/Christianity, in that it will cease to exist upon the inception of evidence because it's steeped in a faith-based premise to begin with, and so validating it via evidence becomes sort of paradoxical?
I think so. I think this is one of the dangers going down the creationist intelligent design route, is that if you insist on proving your tenets with science, what are you going to do if the science tells you something else? Are you going to abandon your faith? You're going to give up your belief in Jesus and so forth if you're a Christian? Most people won't, I think, because they don't really base their beliefs on that on logic and science anyway. But if they insist on it, they may end up dooming themselves.
Well, yeah, they can't. The two can't really coexist.
Not if you push it too far.
Mm-hmm. Sort of a disparate type of concept. Incidentally, I think we'd all love to hear some debates and whatnot in the future if you can arrange that.
I'm going to put them in the real skeptics cage. We're going to bring in one at a time because
Ultimate fighting man.
That would be great radio entertainment value.
And we're going to get the tougher ones toward the end, Michael. By that time, you'll be exhausted and they'll pound you.
Oh, boy.
All right. Hey, thank you for the call.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate it. Next up, let's go to our wild card line. You're on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hello, George. Hello, Michael. This is Jeff calling from Austin.
Sounds like you're driving tonight.
I'm driving. You want to hear the horn?
I sure do.
How's that?
That was a loud one. Okay, you're in.
All righty. My question is how can any scientist not believe in a creator when not evolution, but the law of inertia proves that there has to be some entity in and of itself that doesn't move to start the movement? Yeah, that question has never been answered since the philosopher that lived 300 years before Christ started it.
Right. This is the second argument of Thomas Aquinas' 5 proofs for God, the prime mover. The first one is the first cause. So
before him,
the universe has to have a cause. Yeah. And if everything's in motion, there had to be a first motion, right? Well, you can always ask, well, what caused God and what made God move?
But that's just it. He's the mover.
Well, why can't?
And he's an entity in and of himself that requires nothing.
But entities need creators. So who created the creator?
Only the moving ones. Only the moving ones.
Yeah, but we don't know that what the universe was like before this universe. There might have been previous bubble universes that caused this universe to start moving.
Well, see, that's my point.
There could be an infinite regress where you don't need God.
Could be a what?
Infinite regress. It could be an infinite. Time could be infinite backwards, where there is no beginning. And even if there is a beginning, it's possible that there are just spontaneous motions from atoms. These are these quantum effects, these quantum indeterminacy effects, where there are just random decays of particles. In the quantum foam of the cosmos, in the vacuum of space, this quantum foam, there may just be these random fluctuations that start things moving. This is what particle physicists think now actually happens.
Is that along the lines of spontaneous generation?
No, it's different concept.
If you have movement, I don't see how you can have movement without a beginning. I mean, that's something, that there's, again, like I say, that's a law that nobody has proved wrong. And never, and I don't know how they ever will.
I don't think it's a law. What it is it's a product of how our brains are structured. Our brains are structured to see cause and effect, but we can't get back to the beginning. It's impossible to discern it. What was there before time began? You can't even ask the question. It's like what's north of the North Pole. It's by definition, our language is restricted. Our brains cannot really even ask that question. It's not answerable.
Well, but that's a question you have to ask. Otherwise, you're stuck with nothing but macro.
Well, you can ask it, and it's fun to talk about, but it doesn't become proof of anything. Is what I'm saying.
But there again, like I said, the law of inertia proves that there has to be a mover. Otherwise, there is no law of inertia.
I understand. Is that what you're saying? I understand what you're saying. I got it, but.
Okay. Well, I got one other quick question, if you will. One, George, you're going to have to get Hugh Ross to debate this guy.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll put him in the cage with him.
But tell me something. Now, you talk about energy all the time, but you can't show it to me. I mean, you can give me a mathematical equation for energy, and you can tell me it's E equals MC squared, and you can tell me what it does, but you can't tell me what it is. And it's the same as God. I can't tell you what it is. I can give you an equation for him, and I can tell you what he does. But I can't tell you what he is. You see, that's the same with energy, but yet we take it on faith that it's there.
But energy you can measure. God is much fuzzier than that. I mean, what you're talking about with God is like, well, a miracle, or I sensed his presence, or whatever. I don't want to put words in your mouth. How do you think? Why do you think there's a God? I mean, do you sense him? Do you talk to him? Does he talk to you? Do you have a sense of presence? Answered prayers? What?
That's the big question. Back with final questions with our guest, Michael Shermer. I'm George Norrie, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Our guest tomorrow, Com Kelleher. We're going to be talking about some encounters, including some teleported objects, invincible creatures, and flying objects on Coast to Coast AM. But we'll be back with Dr. Michael Shermer, founder of Skeptic Magazine, and the rest of your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Your phone calls as we wrap things up. Michael, the government years ago conducted experiments in remote viewing. They tried to see if it would work. They did have some interesting results. Your take on remote viewing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I took a course in that. I took a weekend seminar, and we filmed the whole thing for a TV show, and it was very enlightening to me to see how it works in the sense of my previous statement about humans being pattern-seeking animals. Most people draw very similar kinds of shapes, circles, ovals, straight lines, angles. There's only so many different things you can draw, and it's pretty limited for those of us that have pretty bad artistic skills, which are most people. And, it turns out you can see all kinds of things when you know what you're supposed to be looking for. So we tested this remote viewer fellow, and anyway, it was pretty obvious that there was nothing to it. In terms of the Stargate program, the actual official data and all that stuff, I've never seen the raw data, but my friend Ray Hyman, who's a really good professional experimental psychologist, who's very fair and open-minded dealing with the paranormal. He's probably the most fair skeptic of them all in terms of dealing with this, but he is a skeptic. But he looked at it, and there was just nothing there to be mined in terms of statistical significance or scientific legitimacy. I don't think there's anything there.
We did search it out, though, did we not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The U.S. government spent what was it, $20 billion? I think. Maybe it was 20 million. I forget.
No,
now,
not billion. Not billion.
Yeah,
if it was 20 billion, we would be remote viewing by now.
Yeah, that's right.
I hope.
Yeah, it was 20 million. So, it was an interesting thing. Again, it's part of the Cold War deal. If we're behind if there's a missile gap, maybe there's a psychic gap, a psi gap, they called it. And you never know. I mean, so why not investigate it? That's fine. I don't have any problems with that. Let's run the science, run the experiments. But, after 20 years, if there's nothing there, then it's probably not a good use of our time and money.
To the phones we go. Wild card line, welcome to Coast. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi there.
Yes, sir.
This is Alan from Washington. Thank you, Michael and George.
You're welcome, Alan.
An audience. Michael, you mentioned the efficiency of nuclear energy.
Yeah.
And
well, compared to coal and oil and what it takes to produce it and how many people die and, that kind of thing.
Yes, and the basis of that is atomic energy. And I have a concern I'd like the scientists as yourself to look into, and that is the archaeological evidence that has shown that the Earth has rolled over on its axis several times.
That it's what?
Shifted on its axis.
Oh, shifted. Well, the magnetic pole shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
right.
Who's going to operate those if they're underneath water? Those reactors?
If what reactors are underwater?
If the Earth decides to roll on its axis, who's going to operate the reactors if they're underneath water?
No,
well, I don't think the planet physically.
No, the planet
doesn't.
The magnetic pole shift. The planet itself doesn't flip.
Okay, but the poles itself keep the planet.
It's a magnetic shift.
Which creates havoc. Believe me, it does. Yes. But the planet physically doesn't go upside down.
Well, and theoretically, I believe that it rolls over it to its sides from simulation devices that tested that. And with going into the spiritual aspects of matters, with the electromagnetic radiation that we all empower ourselves with, that is basically consciousness or thought. Pardon, I lost track of thought there.
Okay, thanks.
Well,
he tried to put it together, but
some of these are big, heavy concepts. Again, consciousness. I think here's one of the great questions I think has not been answered: is where is the self located? We all have a sense of self. You George Nuri, this is me, and I feel like I'm here in my brain. But where is that in the brain, actually? We know what most of the parts of the brain do, and where's the part that is you? And nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody even knows what you might be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's so interesting.
Let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to Coast. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, John from Cleveland.
Hi, John.
I was listening to a former top chairman of the National Intelligence Estimates for the CIA under 5 administrations down to the present, Ray McGovern, and I heard him on the Randy Rose program today, and he said some things that other people, high-placed, tough-minded people that I've seen in other journals like the Canadian journal Global Outlook.ca, and he said that he thinks it's a great public service that those people that are investigating the evidence of complicity of elements within the secret agencies of the American government in 9/11 are performing a great public service. He says when he was young and callow, he believed all of the swill about the lone nut theory of the Kennedy assassination, but at this point he tends in the direction that there was complicity, and I believe that we've got to go beyond the very safe and easy skepticism about mind reading and the paranormal, and take on the much more difficult, I admit, power structure, the shadow government, the CIA, the military-industrial complex. And I think that for the safety of our democracy, which is threatened at this point, and world peace. And I would also mention that it was just mentioned, George, and I know it wasn't deliberate, but first I would mention that the conspiracy of Operation Northwoods was not known for about 40 years until someone within the government leaked it. It was supposed to be reclassified, these documents that showed the plans of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Undersecretary of Defense to murder Americans, to terror bomb American cities in the 60s, blow up an airplane that was a drone airplane, blame all this on Cuba, and use it as a pretext to invade Cuba. It was called off by Kennedy. And any time that the man who revealed these documents, James Bamford, the top expert on the NSA, was on the media completely ignored that part of his book, Body of Secrets, that dealt with that, and only wanted to know how to make the CIA tougher, stronger, and more able to carry out its,
Okay, I'm going to ask you for a question because your phone's going.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think you should show the same kind of skepticism about the kinds of issues, the burning issues that are leading us into war, the kinds of lies we've been told that have been proven lies that led us into Iraq that are now being simply recycled to lead us into war against Iraq. And if we're going to spend our skepticism, I think it ought to be on those issues.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good point. But I think Americans are skeptical by nature when it comes to politics. I think it's why we have such contentious debates and such hostility between the parties. I wish there was a strong third party. I don't know if we need 4, 6, 8 parties like some of the European countries have, but 2 is a little scary in terms of not enough, I think, dividing up the powers. And, in terms of Bush getting away with stuff, geez, I mean, gosh, maybe I can't expose it with Skeptic Magazine and our little webpage, skeptic.com, but 60 Minutes, 2020, I mean, Dateline, Nightline, these guys, they have, huge budgets, and I'm glad they're there, investigating these things, and the more of that, that's what the free press is all about.
Just got to make sure they're accurate, Michael. That's it.
Well, and then we have, the Drudge Report, and the sort of moving toward the alternative media, and I think that's good too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They bring forth things that you normally won't get in a mainstream program.
And I think this is one of the things that the Internet's going to do to change the world is just make it impossible for dictators to control their people, for a single media to control information. It's just impossible.
At least for too long.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. Let's go to our international line. Where are you calling from?
I'm Tim from Toronto.
Hi, Tim. Go ahead.
I actually am going to continue kind of with the line of the last caller, but I have more specific questions. My questions involve, I'll be brief. First of all, I'm a little confused as to how Building 7 in the 9/11 event went to the ground in a collapse style when that one wasn't hit by a plane, and last time I checked, steel burns at 15,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is...
Well, I believe it was brought down. I don't know about you, Michael, but...
Okay, on the steel melting thing, steel melts at 2,700 degrees. Jet fuel burns at 1,500 degrees, so this is one of the arguments about the Twin Towers. And so
also, though, he's talking about Building 7,
I know.
Which wasn't really hit by anything.
Yeah, I understand. But the other things that are burning in there, the carpets, paper, drapes, the furniture, that's what got the temperatures up and over the 2,700 degrees that steel melts in terms of the Twin Towers. I've not looked into Building 7, although I've been asked this now enough times that I guess I'm going to have to take a day to look into
I would be very interested in your comments about that after you have a chance to look into it.
Yeah,
if you want to send me an email
I'll do
or something.
That.
We'll
do that the next show. Yeah.
Wait for your comments on that, but do look into that.
Okay.
Because that is a very strange one of the whole thing. And also, there was an engineer who said not too long ago, he's very surprised at how the 2 major buildings went down, almost like a demolition would, rather than topple. I think everybody, especially those terrorists, I think they were assuming that if they went, they'd go into other buildings, which is what they want.
They don't, though? I read a good explanation on that, and that 95% of the building is air. It's mostly empty space.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't topple over. It's going to just collapse down upon itself because it's mostly empty.
Interesting. All right. Well, look into 7.
Nova did a good program on this. They had all the engineers that designed the buildings and built them and so on, and they were surprised that it came down as well, but they completely understood why they came down. That wasn't a big shock. Once they figured out, how it happened, the pancaking effect of the upper stories collapsing, once the support beams on the side started to snap because of the temperature, high temperature. As for Building 7, I don't know yet. I haven't read anything on that.
East of the Rockies, welcome to the show. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, George and Michael. This is Tim in Missouri.
Hi, Tim.
Michael, the question that I have for you, I haven't actually heard the whole show tonight, and I don't believe you've addressed it, but I'm concerned with what you think about meditation and Zen and some of the alternate wisdom traditions. And if you're familiar with this, what do you think of some of the modern theories, such as that of Ken Wilber and transpersonal psychology?
Right. I've tried meditation myself personally. I can't do it. I don't have the quiet state of mind. I'm a little too active. I get my own meditation when I'm riding my bike, and I'm told by the people that are like really into meditation that I describe my state of mind when I'm out riding by myself, and they say, "Yep, that's it. You're meditating." I said, "Okay, good." I just have a hard time sitting in the lotus position in a quiet room, but. In terms of the science of it, it absolutely does all kinds of things to brain states. I mean, it changes them dramatically, measurably. You can see it. What it does in terms of health is a little harder to quantify. It wouldn't surprise me if it turned out that meditating reduces stress, and that strengthens your immune system, and that makes you more resistant to illness, something like that. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. I'm sure it's got to be good for you, in the same sense that getting a massage is good for you, or sitting in the hot tub, or going for a quiet walk, or things like that reduce stress. I think are probably good.
All right, thanks for that comment. Let's move on. Not too much time left. Wildcard line, welcome to the show. Hi there.
Hi, this is Ed over in Sherman Oaks.
Hey, Ed, welcome to the show.
Hi, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It's a very different kind of an atmosphere from most of the shows.
That's true.
And I agree with a lot of what the guest is saying. But Michael, I was just thinking that have you ever heard of Stan Tenen?
And Stan's been a guest before.
No.
He deciphers ancient Hebrew text.
Oh no, I don't know anything about that.
Well, he's I don't know what kind of philosophical area he's in or you would call it, but he's very mathematical. He's also very very philosophical, and he's kind of basing everything out of sort of a Hebrew background, sort of a mystical Jewish background, I guess.
Oh, like the Kabbalah?
I'm sorry?
Like the Kabbalah?
Exactly. But it's very interesting in that he is extremely intelligent, extremely well-read, and if you were to give him some of your arguments, I think it would be a very interesting debate in terms of, being able to look at things from multiple sides, and, some of this stuff about structure being necessary versus whether something can just be an energy and can result in structure and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting questions, and I personally have experienced some things with consciousness where I can find it very difficult to believe that physical or material existence is the only relevant subject.
Mm-hmm. Right. My friend Susan Blackmore, who does she's probably the leading researcher on out-of-body near-death experiences. She's also a Zen Buddhist, does a lot of meditation every day, and she has a lot of interesting things to say along these same lines of what it seems like. Although the problem is what it seems like to you and I personally in our own heads, it may be very different from the way the world actually is. It's hard to get out of our own heads. We can't perceive our own brains in a sense. So when the brain does something, this is my theory of alien abductions and out-of-body experiences and so on, we tend to interpret them as external events. I think there's something just going on in the brain, but the brain doesn't perceive itself, so it senses that there's something outside of the brain. That's the sense presence. You can stimulate this. There's a guy named Michael Persinger. I don't know if you've ever had him on the show, but you should. He's really interesting. He bombards the brain with these electromagnetic patterns, and he gets subjects in his lab to have these out-of-body experiences and alien abduction experiences and whatnot. What it is he's creating a sense presence in the room, but he's just stimulating the brain. So the brain can't sense that there's two selves in it. There's only one self, and then somebody else is in the room, is how it's interpreted. And I think that explains a lot of things about our sense of aliens or angels or spirits or that kind of thing.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I want everyone to just pick your top 3 people that you would like to debate Michael Shermer separately, and I'll pick the top 5 then because I'll just add them all up. So if you want to email me at george@coasttocoastam.com, just send me 3 names of individuals you think would be appropriate to go into the skeptic's cage with Michael, and then in the not-too-distant future we'll set up a program, and we'll bring one in each half hour and see if Michael's standing by the end of the 5 rounds or whatever we might have. We'll do that. And, Michael, I'm glad that you'd be a willing participant.
Oh, happy to do it. It'd be fun.
I appreciate that. A lot of people tend to run away it's good to know you're going to stay in there and battle.
Happy to do it.
All right, your website's again, skeptic.com, SCIAM.com. And what should we look for shortly? Another book?
Yep, the Evolution and Intelligent Design book will be out in August. I'm not sure what the title will be, but it's on evolution and intelligent design. You can always go to skeptic.com
to
find out what's going on.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay.
Appreciate you being on the program. For Steve Carr, Dan Gallanti, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell. I'm George Norrie. Somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. I'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe.